Support for this podcast comes from Bryn Mawr Communications. BMC produces a number of informative podcast series spanning a variety of topics in ophthalmology. Discover a new show at itube.net/podcasts.
Welcome to the conclusion of our two-part special episode, Contact Lens Business in the COVID-19 Era, Products on the Market. We're glad you've joined us to hear Drs. Lewis, Pillai, Tsai, and Yu conclude their conversation. This podcast was supported with advertising by Bausch & Lomb. The opinions and views expressed during this program are those of the individual participants and are not necessarily those of Bausch & Lomb or its affiliates. Now let's get back to the panel.
Dr. Pillai, can you share, a little bit about your journey with scleral lenses and, how and why you started prescribing them?
Well, so my journey into specialty contacts in general was a force of need. When I came out of optometry school, I worked in a rural city, and there was a lot of keratoconus, a lot of high cell, and so the practice happened to have a lot of RGPs, and that wasn't necessarily an interest of mine, but I had to. Those are the patients that I saw, and I didn't know really what to do with them, and I would refer to the owner, the practitioner that was owning that office, and then eventually he was saying, well, you should probably learn and go dive yourself into it. So I watched webinar, lectures, just really getting into it. And that's how my interest came out of it, is because of necessity. I had these patients that needed this, and I needed to learn how to fit these patients. And this is pre-sclerals. Scleral lenses wasn't as sexy as it is now. That wasn't around. These are all RGPs. And to be honest, how I started off, these patients would come in and I would just order the highest sill that I could get in a soft contact lens, and obviously that didn't work. And then I'll say, oh, well, let me try a synergized hybrid lens. And this was, again, about 8 years ago. So they're a fantastic lens now, but didn't always equate to what I needed for at that time. And that's how I got the reputation of the doctors, not to go see if you need a specialty contact lens at that time. So I had to learn. I had to really grind and really find out of how to fit RGPs. And as you just get more and more practice, you get better and better, like anything in life. And then when scleral lenses came around, it really helped I wouldn't want to say that it made the process easier. What I would say is it expanded of how much I could treat. And I found that out probably 3 to 4 years later. And my practice now does a lot of scleral lens patients. So I want to highlight of how we kind of get to those patients. So there's the keratoconic patients, the ectasias, which we all know about, the post-transplants. Those are the candidates into scleral lenses that we all know about, and they can do very well with them. But the things that we don't think about are sometimes the normal patients. We talked about the multifocal and the toric patients, and there's a lot of great options now. But prior to that, there were a lot of candidates for scleral lenses that just had high astigmatism and didn't want to wear reading glasses. And they were not offered an option of a contact lens that could accommodate them. And while the evaluation and the material cost is a little bit higher, that's something that we should offer them. It's not something that we should be dictating their pocketbook. If there's something that they need and they have a profession or even at home that they need distance and up close vision that glasses just can't provide, we shouldn't be dictating what a person can get or not get by predetermining what their financial situation is. We should be offering the best visual outcome. And those patients did very well. I was surprised when I actually offered the option to every single patient, how many really actually chose it. So my journey was out of necessity. And then out of necessity came the passion of helping these patients, because the visual changes you get from whether it's a high cell patient or a patient that's been anisometropic for several years and just hated wearing glasses, so they didn't wear them and were just dealing with their horrible vision, and now can get into a contact lens that can really accommodate them. I mean, the changes are really, really incredible. And I can't emphasize enough how life-changing they are. The patients are willing to go through that process, because it's not the difference of, I can see a little bit better. It's the difference of, I can now go to work. It's now I can do what I need to do for my life. It's not that I can just stay home because I have to just wear glasses that don't work anymore. My life is different. It's not just that my vision is different.
Wow. So obviously your commitment to taking the time, through your journey, you started from the ground up to learn how to fit sclerals at a high level is making a significant impact in your patients' lives. For those doctors like myself, who are less familiar with scleral lens products and technologies, you were talking about best there for a moment. Can you share with our audience some of the new products that you think are the best out there and why?
Yeah, so the great thing about scleral lenses, especially, it's a newer thing, the newer sexy product. So there's so much changes technology-wise and product-wise. So as my go-to, I do like the Zen lens. It has so many things that I can change as a multifocal option: toric haptics, front surface torics, HydraPeg, which is one of the newer things that you can add on the surface of the lens to help the wettability of the lens. So it's a great lens. I've been using it for years, and it's really advancing with the consultants as well as we're learning more about scleral lenses and ocular surface disease. As far as new things, one thing I want to highlight is actually filling solutions. So what we used to do was any type of 0.9% saline solution, so Addy packs, which you can get from Amazon and other compounding pharmacies, and then we kind of graduated to more specific solutions for scleral lenses, like Lacropure, Sclerofill. Sclerofill is an excellent one. That's what we use in our office. But a new one that just came out was Neutrophil, which is a little bit more similar to the natural composition of our tear. So that's the one that we've been trying out in our office. It's an excellent solution. So that's one to look out for. If you're having problems with midday fogging and debris in the chamber of the scleral lens, Neutrophil is an excellent lens solution to try out. The other thing I want to start highlighting is, and this is, I think, the future of scleral lenses, is scleral profilometry. So the days of diagnostic evaluation, we're putting lenses on and off. While I'm still doing it, and a lot of practitioners are, I think it will eventually get to the point where we can do actual objective data calculation and empirically order scleral lenses. And it's already there. That the technology is there, and I think it's only going to expand. So the things to really look out for are those scleral profilometers. And there's three that I'd like to highlight. There's the SMAP, which works with Visionary Optics. So they work with the latitude lens. So a great modality. One thing to keep in mind is you'll be working with that specific lenses on. Then there's the Eaglet ESP, which is another scleral lens profilometry, which has updated the software recently and worked with a plethora of different scleral lens designs. So I think that's an excellent modality to look into as well. And then Pentacam CSP also has scleral topography as well that can incorporate into other designs. ScanFit and iPrint are the other things I want to highlight. iPrint is basically a molding of the surface of the eye. So if you're talking about accurate and completely customized, that's the way to go. So that's for extremely ectatic corneas, glaucoma shunts, anything that's really irregular. iPrint is something to look into. And then, and really that might be only about 2% of cases in your traditional optometric practice. ScanFit is the newer design that they launched, which is still very customized, but is for not as the advanced situation where we have so many glaucoma shunts, very ectatic cornea. So those are more molding based. And then, like I said, the scleral profilometry can be used data-driven and empirical-driven for scleral lenses. So very, very exciting.
Wow, that's a lot of technology. We're talking about filling solutions, different designs, materials, and even a potentially revolutionary fitting process to help both eye care practitioners and patients with time, which I'm sure a lot of eye care providers are concerned about. So we're certainly also seeing a lot of myopia prevalence all over the world. And we know that there isn't a magical cure. Whoa, tongue twister there. There isn't a magical cure for optometrists yet, but some of the amazing technologies we do have available to us, they do help us combat myopia progression. So Dr. Yu, in your opinion, what trends in utilization have you noticed in myopia control in your practice?
Well, I think you're entirely right in that myopia has really surged as far as just increased patient awareness, diagnosis of myopia, myopia progression. It's been obviously a ever-growing hot topic in optometry and what a lot of optometrists are doing as well. I think COVID has heightened a lot of it because with all the digital screen time and all the computer usage, the homeschooling, there definitely has been a lot of change in patients. I even had a patient who I saw back in March before everything shut down. And by the time I saw them close to June, they had changed by about 0.75 diopters, which, as we all know, is a massive change for that amount of time. So I think that we as optometrists have a tremendous opportunity to be able to really guide patients and educate them and make them more aware that myopia is a serious condition. And there is a lot that we can really do to manage it and to help to slow it down. I've been doing orthokeratology for 12 plus years now, and it was something I did in school, during residency, and beyond. And I watched it grow and really, really change worldwide, especially here in the US, where more and more practitioners have become interested. It definitely is a great practice builder, which we can certainly talk more to. But as far as just offering something new and something different for patients to learn about and to say, hey, you know, this is a little bit of a different way of thinking, but it's a great approach to try to slow down the myopia progression for your child. Which naturally evolves into a conversation about things you can do to help slow it down, things that we can all integrate into our daily lives, you know, things like visual hygiene. But it opens up a lot of different doors as far as what you can manage with the patient. So for me, what's been happening is that during a myopia management consultation, and I do probably large percentage ortho-K, that's how I've gotten a lot of referrals. It's a big conversation and it definitely involves a little bit more time, but it's about educating the parent as far as how fast their child is progressing, how their binocular posture, you know, their exophoria, the esophoria, convergence issues, how that all ties into myopic progression, their family genetics, of course, how much time they're spending outside actually doing something outdoors like sports versus just on their phone or computer all the time, as well as just things that they're doing day to day, things in school, their different activities. So it's been a good conversation starter as far as trying to offer something different and differentiate yourself as a practice too.
I think that that's amazing. I also know that there's a lot of colleagues that are interested in myopia management. And for these listeners who are curious, what types of patients walk into your office where you look at and you start giving these clinical considerations for myopia control as a candidate?
I think a lot of the ones that I am seeing, we look at the prescription, you know, where they are, where they've been the past year or two, how fast they're changing over the course of the 6 months or a year. Sometimes if they're new patients to me, I'll look back at their old glasses prescriptions or they'll come with files. We're looking at the corneal topography to see how good of a candidate they could be for, say, ortho-K. Also assessing how interested they are in what kind of risk profile they might be interested in. If it's something more like atropine drops they could be interested in, or soft contact lens management, which we've seen an explosion of different things on the soft myopia management market. The MySight lens, which is obviously FDA approved, as well as the NatraView multifocal, which has a fantastic peripheral plus defocus that really helps to slow down myopic growth. Versus something that they would want for ortho-K. So I think a lot of that comes down to how comfortable they are sleeping with a contact versus having contacts during their daytime. And where I am, I have a lot of kids who are very, very active in sports, a lot of swimmers and runners and people who golf or play tennis. And they love the concept of being able to see during the day without having to wear anything. And not worrying about something folding up in their eye or potentially flying out of their eye, or even just rubbing their eye and having the lens fall out. And of course, being in New England, we have a lot of the seasonal allergy component, come spring or fall, how much that plays into wearing daytime contacts as well.
Excellent. I'm curious, from a patient and a parent perspective, because you might be using this on younger patients. Are there concerns about safety? And if so, how do you, ease that concern that the patient or that the parent might have?
Well, there is usually some concern. Some a little bit are more well-versed with Ortho-K in particular because they're of Asian background. And as we know, it has a very high prevalence of use in Asia, Europe, Australia, just basically outside the US. So that's been a large proportion of people who have some knowledge of it. But what I tell them with the hard lenses is that, the materials, a lot of them are FDA approved for overnight wear, under safe guidance and hygiene and just proper care. The risk of infection and other adverse effects can be very, very low, oftentimes mimicking what the risk with soft lenses are. With the soft lenses, if it's something they're concerned about, especially if it's a younger child, like maybe 7, 8, 9, the benefit is that it's a daily disposable, which we know is the healthiest and cleanest way that a child can wear contacts. And I think a lot of parents really, really admire that aspect of it as well.
So it sounds like myopia control is also another wonderful practice builder opportunity for eye care providers. Now you mentioned the MySight, which I think is a daily disposable soft contact lens, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So that's how far. So you're fitting, amazing technology that can reshape or slow down the progression, but we also have it in daily disposable soft contact lenses that are coming out as well. What other neat products are there out there that you like to use, and why do you like using them?
Well, I use a lot of different, I would say, gas permeable designs. I've used some of the Moon Lens, which is by Art Optical. Of course, the big name is Paragon and all of the different permutations of its lenses, the regular Paragon, the dual axis, the other lesser known varieties as well. There's a couple more customizable options as far as lenses from GP specialists. And I know Bausch & Lomb has a new system out as well that's supposed to be very user-friendly for practitioners, integrates a lot of customizable designs. So a lot of the newer designs are incorporating factors like HVID, different lift areas in the peripheral curves of the lens, different return zones, different optic zone sizes, customizable diameters. So there's a lot of different ways to really tweak the lens that didn't used to exist years ago. And that just speaks to how much myopia management and orthokeratology has really evolved, which is amazing.
Incredible. We're talking about these unique products, some of these reshaping technologies. It's obvious that myopia control is so much more than just preventing vision changes here, right? You're helping lower associated pathologies such as cataracts, myopic macular degeneration, retinal detachments, all these things down the line. And I came across an interesting fact, well, I shouldn't say fact, but statistic, and it read that by 2050, maybe half of the global population could be myopic. And I just thought that number was astounding. So I could see how a lot of eye care providers could embrace these treatment options in the future. Well, I've really enjoyed speaking with our amazing panel of doctors this evening. And we're very fortunate to obviously be practicing at a time where there's a lot of quality products and technology. Well, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. We're fortunate to have a fantastic group of panelists. And I'd like to dive right into the questions coming from our listeners this evening. So the first question is, my patients are asking to convert from monthly lenses to dailies due to feeling they are safer in the pandemic. Do you lean one way on this? And that's a great question. Dr. Tsai, what are your thoughts on that question?
If patients are interested in switching from their monthlies to dailies, I would say that's actually a great thing for a couple of reasons. I mean, I think that We've seen that over time, over the past couple of months, we learned a little bit more about the pandemic and COVID and how it can spread. So just like bacteria does spread, there are fast ways for viral particles to spread, but I don't think that, in monthly lenses, there's just more likely, it's just more likely to develop like protein buildup, bacteria on the lens, and they tend to overwear them. So in general, switching to dailies are always going to be a little bit more hygienic, a little bit more easier to remember to take them off. And I think that if patients are interested in switching to a daily lens, that's definitely something that I personally recommend. And I've seen actually a lot of my personal patients switch from, or even new patients that come in as monthlies, switching to a daily version. Part of that has to do with the fact that they've also noticed that they wear their glasses more now that they're at home and they're working more remote. So having lenses that they can put on sort of on the weekends or as needed, daily disposables definitely would fit that model a little bit better than the monthlies that they kind of have around that they don't use.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. We're sharing a lot of similar findings in our office. I think that this is a perfect opportunity to work on, re-engaging our patients and developing communication that really is focusing on hygiene, but also maintenance for our contact lenses. And with the dailies, in particular, we know that they're not going to have 100%, right, in the compliance category. But it certainly is an opportunity to talk about washing their hands, right? Singing happy birthday, twice, and then, putting on those daily contact lenses. And we can always revisit the monthly contact lens discussion after the pandemic, right? But now, with a lot of people who have had, probably a pretty challenging year, dailies are probably going to give them the highest level of comfort. So let's go on to our second question. I'm in the Northeast, and with the colder weather, so many patients are complaining about their glasses fogging their masks. I find it harder to convert adults from glasses to contacts. Any tips? Dr. Yu, you're over in the Northeast where it's cold and frigid half the year. What are your thoughts on this question?
Support for this podcast comes from Bryn Mawr Communications. BMC produces a number of informative podcast series spanning a variety of topics in ophthalmology. Discover a new show at itube.net/podcasts.
That's right, Dr. Lewis. Winter is coming here. We, like everybody else, I think we've been fighting the fogging issues, both in the exam room as well as with our patients complaining day to day, when they go run their errands or whenever they're wearing their glasses just in certain socially distanced situations. So I think it's a good opportunity for us to really introduce contacts to people who might have never thought of contacts. And also it's a good time to reassure patients that even with the virus and the pandemic, that contact lens wear is still safe. I think from several patients I've spoken with, that is a misconception sometimes that they don't want to have to touch their face too much or their eye too much. But it's important to remind them that once they follow all the safety precautions that we normally teach with our insertion and removal techniques, that contact lens wear is still just as safe. And especially as we were just saying with daily disposables, it's a great time to introduce patients to the most convenient and most importantly, hygienic way to wear contacts. And especially in times where people are maybe going out a little bit less, the daily disposable is a great introduction for it. Not to mention that we have most times greater peripheral vision with our contacts, and just the ease of being able to see without constantly having to touch our face or our glasses, shifting them around as they slide down our nose or move around on our face as we're looking around. So even for a task like grocery shopping, a multifocal contact for a presbyope is a great way for them to really see.
So it sounds like you share a similar opinion to Dr. Tsai. I mean, there's certainly a high level of priority for putting your patients in technology that gives them, the best safety profile. And so
definitely. I think it's our job to really say, hey, what's the best way that I can, help you refine your life and find the things that you need and make them better.
Yeah, speaking of better, nothing about this pandemic has been convenient. And there are some convenient benefits from wearing contact lenses. One of the things that, has helped our practice really grow in particular has been the ultramultifocal forest astigmatism. And the convenience really came about because of the ergonomic challenges that our patients were facing with spending so much time on the computer or digital devices in general. So we were seeing this prior to the COVID outbreak. And now that we're dealing with a COVID era, patients are spending even more time on digital devices. And so the neck, the shoulder, the back pain, those difficulties, the grinding out, 10, 12, 14 hours a day. We want our patients to be in the most comfortable option for them. And that, in many cases, that actually turns out to be a multifocal or multifocal toric, like I just mentioned. And that's made it a lot easier to convert our patients over from glasses to contact lenses. Also, for adults, I think a lot of our patients, they think it might be difficult, right? Even if you're educating them, okay, like you said, Dr. Yu, these are safer. Like this option works really well. They might be hesitant because they're concerned about how difficult it might be to put on or take off. So we've been able to help out some of our patients by doing that for them. And then having them go around and looking at glasses. And what happens when they're looking at the glasses and they're like, oh my gosh, I can read my phone. I'm talking to my husband. I can see outside while I'm driving. And they're like, you know what? I'm good on glasses. The prescription's about the same anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and try these contact lenses out. So hopefully you find that helpful as well. This is a great question because we've really been focusing on products and technology. So Dr. Pillai, is there one new lens technology that excites you?
That's a tough question. I would ask that the person who asked that question give me a little bit of leeway because I love technology. So if you'll give me a little bit of time, let me say about the things I'm excited about. And then at the end, I'll pick maybe my favorite. So there's a lot of things that come out. You mentioned one, Dr. Lewis, is the multifocal toric options that are out there. I mean, when I was out practicing with the ProClear torics, and unfortunately it didn't work that well. So we were really having to use RGPs, and even the hybrid lenses weren't that great. So we didn't have a lot of options for these patients. Now there's the ultra toric multifocal, the bioaffinity toric multifocal, and these lenses are exceptional. It's surprising how well they're working for these patients, where before when they're coming in, you're out of luck. Stick with glasses. I'll give you monovision, and you got to deal with the depth perception issues. Now these lenses are working fantastic. That is one of the biggest strides that I've seen in the last year. And then now seeing the better options in the premium daily disposables for dry eye. Infuse is one that's came out. We know Dailies Total 1 has been out there for a few years, and having these patients that just can't wear contacts at all, having an option saying, look, you have dry eye, we're treating it, but now there's an option where you can probably tolerate something. You can tolerate something in the eye and still get that vision, and there's multifocal options, and fingers crossed, hopefully some toric options coming soon. And one of the newer ones that come out in the hybrid modality is Synergize released their new ID platform, which is really exciting. So if anybody that's familiar with the hybrid lenses, the way they kind of work is there's a center RGP, and then there's the soft skirt, but there's really three modalities. There's a flat, steep, and medium, and it wasn't exactly custom. Now these lenses are designed based on the topography. So based on what your HVID is, there's an algorithm that incorporates all the topography data, and it's actually a lot more customized off the first fit success. And these are great for all the high astigmats and presbyopic patients. So a lot of great things out there. We got multifocal torics and soft lenses. We have premium daily disposables for dry eye patients. Hybrid lenses are getting better. Scleral lenses are getting better with scleral profilometry and decentered multifocal optics. It's too hard to pick one, but if I had to, I'd probably go for one that fits the majority of our patients. And that you're really picking on me. I gotta go with the patients that suffer the most, the dry eye patient. That's who I see across all demographics, whether they're 15 or they're 45. Most of these patients have some type of issue where they can't deal with a contact lens on their eye. So that expansion, the premium daily disposables, Infuse. Iris is another lens that really hit the market that's made by another optometrist. That's been exciting for us. So if I had to go for one, I would go for the opportunity of the daily disposables and how it's impacting our dry eye patients. But the multifocal torics is probably a close second.
Wow, thank you for that. I know that a lot of our eye care practitioners, they're excited about some of the technology that you've mentioned. And unfortunately, a lot of doctors are having Zoom fatigue. And so, there's a question regarding travel. And, some places might have in-person education, continuing education, and others might not. Um, Doctors, for you, do you see yourself traveling this upcoming calendar year to either, local, state, or even some of the bigger society meetings? Dr. Yu, why don't we start with you?
I think, Dr. Lewis, it's hard to say. Honestly, it feels like when we're in our microcosm of our practice, it's a day by day, week by week kind of situation. But I think depending on how the farther 6 months pan out this coming year, it's definitely possible for travel. The beauty of where we are as far as technology is that we've been able to have a lot of high quality education virtually and through all these different media platforms. That I think it's been a really nice way for us to branch out unexpectedly, but also in a very positive way. So I think depending on how the environment changes, I would personally be open to travel, but I think it's really a week by week kind of situation these days.
Absolutely. Dr. Tsai, I know up by you, one of the biggest events that quite a few of our colleagues travel to is the Vision Expo East. And so do you see yourself, possibly attending that? Or, what's kind of the climate like for your fellow colleagues out there?
New York has been, it's just been a yo-yo this whole year. I mean, I think in the beginning, everything closed, and then the restaurants couldn't open, and then they were allowed to open, but it had to be outdoors, and then they had to shut down and board down during like the protests, and then the stores reopened, and then they boarded back up again for election. So I agree when Debbie said everything was really just day by day. That's how I'm living. But I think it'd be great to, I think go to Vision Expo. It's really down the street, Javits Center for me. And, really what I think I remember it for is just meeting colleagues and, having that in-person sort of relationship and networking. I think that is the part that, I do miss. I think it's hard to replace that virtually. And I do agree that a lot of the content you can learn. And I've seen a lot of CE events over the course of this year during the pandemic that otherwise would not have happened. But again, I think that in person, that human touch, I think meeting one-on-one is special. So if things are able to pick up and things are safe with vaccines and everything else, I would consider it next year.
Absolutely. Dr. Pillai, I know that you're a little south, and so, the warmer's a little bit warmer out there. And that, of course, opens up some opportunities. What are you noticing in your state? We know that there's been some significant flare-ups and a bit of a roller coaster, but with the nicer weather and the ability to be outside, a bit more, are people kind of thinking outside the box with the approach of getting a larger group of people together, or are people just kind of maybe hunker down this upcoming year?
Well, I'm in Texas. Yeah, we can have all the upticks we want. People are doing what they want. Restaurants are packed. People are going out. They're doing whatever they want. So my state's a little bit different. We kind of go by our own rules. So one thing about traveling for these meetings, unfortunately, I don't have the magic answer, just like what Dr. Tsai and Dr. Yu mentioned. I mean, I miss it. It's one of the things I really look forward to every year is going out to these conferences and meeting my colleagues, and it's usually the place where I learn the most. And I miss that human touch, but we're in a whole different era and what I feel comfortable going. So I'll say this, I really want to, in 2021, I want to go to all the meetings I can. I haven't booked anything, and because I have to wait and see how it is. I've done a few actually in-person lectures and meetings. And if I'm speaking, I feel a little bit more comfortable because I can be, I can be away from people. And to be honest, I mean, just because of what we do, we see so many patients, and a lot of our patients are maybe high risk. And the biggest concern, I'm a young, healthy male. Most of us are, young and healthy, worried about transmitting to somebody else and then going home and seeing their parents, et cetera. That's the biggest worry. So unless I know the exact protocol, if there's a meeting where we're having 500 people sitting next to each other. I just don't think that's plausible even in 2021. I hope I'm wrong. I do miss going to these meetings, but we just I don't have any of the answers from the people that are organizing the meetings of what these conferences are going to look like, what the state of each individual state and the entire nation will be, what the state of the vaccine will be, how the numbers are going to be look. So yeah, I want to go to the meetings. I dearly miss it, but some things takes precedence.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of logistical challenges, of course, especially with different states, as you're mentioning your state's kind of running a little bit different than, say, New York and Connecticut, and certainly different than our state here over in Illinois. We're in Chicago, pretty much everything is shut down. Now I'm in central Illinois, where we've had mitigating solutions, but it's starting to feel like it's shut down. At the same time, I myself started traveling to some of the larger events, and I would certainly recommend to all of our listeners, go to all of these different optometry meetings. It is a wonderful opportunity to engage with your colleagues, and you will always come out learning so much more than what you went in with. And you're going to end up making a lot of friends as well. And this is all about a community. And I feel like that's what optometry is really all about. And it's why we're so good, right, at what we do as eye care providers and working with our patients from the day to day, because we're really community people. So this last question here kind of ties a little bit into that. Are there or will there be any options for patients who are environmentally conscious? Some patients have cited concerns regarding the high usage of plastics. I think that is a very good question, and probably one that does not get offered or asked enough. I can share personally a little bit about our experience. So I myself was curious about this a few years ago. And so we started looking at the amount of plastic that was going into producing contact lenses, more specifically dailies versus monthlies. And one thing we don't typically, of course, think of is the solution waste, right? So the solution waste builds up incredibly fast, but also the actual cases for contact lenses are worth so many more daily disposables than you would ever possibly think. And I'm a little rusty on the numbers, but I believe some of the hard cases are worth about 4 years worth of daily disposables. And some of the hydrogen peroxide cases, which require even more plastic, are worth about 8. Now, don't hold me to that, but I recall reading some staggering numbers like that. So you're talking about potentially 4 or 8 years worth of daily disposables. Plus, of course, the carbon footprint from having to, send all the solutions, make the solution cases. So there are some programs out there. There's TerraCycle, the BioTrue family, and you'll find that a lot of eye care providers, if you look online, they will actually map out for you, if you put in your area, where you can drop off these plastics. And so most of these plastics are actually recyclable. And the really neat thing is that I believe with TerraCycle, they don't just recycle one manufacturer. They're willing to accept all types of manufacturers.
That's correct.
And cardboard boxes, you can generally recycle those in your regular recycling. Docs, what are your thoughts? Is there anything that you'd like to share regarding this question?
In our office, we have the Bausch & Lomb TerraCycle, the box. And so a lot of the patients who are concerned, I tell them to collect the cases that they have in the bag that we give them for their yearly purchase. And I say, bring it back to us. And if you drop it off, happy to give you some extra free trials. So it usually works and it makes them feel better about what they're doing. And they also know places that they can mail off or drop it in. So I think that's been helpful.
That's incredible. I love that trial idea. I'm going to implement that tomorrow.
One thing that's interesting about the TerraCycle is that a lot of people that are environmentally conscious, they might still recycle their blister packs or whatever. But what we found out after they instituted that program, whatever recycling bin you were putting your plastics, it wasn't actually getting recycled properly. Whatever plastic, or, I'm not an expert on this, but whatever recycling number that's supposed to be for your contact lens disposables, the blister packs, isn't being properly recycled if you just put in your regular recycling bin. It has to be separated properly. So not only are we recycling it, number one, but number two, we're probably doing a better job than your normal recycling. So if you thought you were doing a good job, we're actually doing it properly. So it's surprising how often that comes up is, well, how I got to throw all this, I'm gonna kill my planet. Well, no, you're probably doing a worse job because of what you mentioned with your cases and solutions and et cetera. And we can just say, the disposable blister packs from Daily Disposal is now what's the problem with recycling in the world. It's everything else. It's less than 1%, but we can still affect that 1% and we can finally recycle them properly. And you are right, the TerraCycle program is great. We have it in our office and it's not exclusive to Bausch & Lomb. They'll recycle any manufacturer. Let your patients know, we'll take care of it. Bring it to our office and they'll come pick it up.
Absolutely. And I believe for our fellow listeners, you can also be a recycling site. So there's a wonderful opportunity there. I'd like to thank our amazing docs. It's always a pleasure getting together with all of you. And of course, I'd like to thank our wonderful sponsor, Bausch & Lomb. And good luck to all of our eye care providers. And I hope that 2021 is a wonderful year for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you for tuning in to this special episode. We'd also like to thank Drs. Lewis, Pillai, Tsai, and you for their participation. This podcast was supported with advertising by Bausch & Lomb. The opinions and views expressed during this program are those of the individual participants, and are not necessarily those of Bausch & Lomb or its affiliates.